The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus and his disciples left from there and began a journey through Galilee, but he did not wish anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, "The Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise." But they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, he began to ask them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they remained silent, for they had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all, and the servant of all." Taking a child, he placed it in their midst, and putting his arms around it, he said to them, Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." Brothers and sisters, the Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Please be seated.
Muli po magandang umaga sa inyong lahat and welcome to the Minor Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary of Manaoag. Minsan sa isang classroom, pagpasok ng professor, the first thing that he did was to send out one student. He came inside the classroom and he called out one student and he said, Get out of my class." All of the students were silent. And then that student who was asked to be sent out asked, "Professor, why? Why are you sending me out?" But the professor did not give any reason or any explanation. He said, "Get out of my class." And reluctantly, that student went out of the class. All of the other students were just silent. They did not speak a word. Then the professor asked, "Okay, our lesson for today is law. What is law?" Then the students answered, and one of them said, "Sir, law is all about justice. Ang batas ay patungkol sa katarungan, justice." And he said, if there is law, for example, if there is law in our classroom, is it just that I send out one of your classmates? Tahimik sila lahat, walang nagsalita. And then one student finally responded, "Sir, it's unjust. Yung ginawa niyo po sa kaklase namin is unjust. Hindi po makatarungan." And then the professor said, "Yes, it's unjust. But why is it that no one among you dared to say it was unjust? Bakit tahimik lang kayo? Bakit walang nagsalita sa inyo? Bakit walang nanindigan sa inyo?" Isa lang ang nagtanong, "Sir, for what reason? Why?" Yung tao, yung estudyante lang na pinalabas, yung nagtanong. But for the others, they were unaffected. Bakit? Hindi naman sila yung pinalabas. They were not the ones who experienced injustice. And so the professor said, "Please, when you see an injustice, Even if it's not done to you, speak out. Why? Because once that injustice is directed to you, other people might not speak out on your behalf. Others might not speak on your behalf. Bakit ko po sinasabi ito? Because today we are celebrating the 39th anniversary of the People Power. People Power. And because of that, we are called, or we call ourselves Filipinos as peace-loving people. Peace-loving people. We were able to triumph and stage a revolution that is peaceful. And so with that, we call ourselves, or we are labeled as peace-loving people. But sometimes, my dear brothers and sisters, we simply settle for peace wherein we are not affected. As long as our life, our business, our own realities are not affected, then for us we think it's peaceful and we want it to be that way. Because we are peace-loving people. But according to Pope Paul VI, he said, if you want peace, work for justice. Do not simply settle for peace that is without commotion, peace without war, but peace with justice. When there is an injustice, we have to address it. We have to speak out. We have to speak up against the injustice. That's according to Pope Paul VI. If you want peace, true peace, work for justice. That is why we must also work not only for peace, but for justice. Sana hindi lang tayo peace-loving people, but also justice-loving people. But for us Christians, justice is not enough. Hopefully we are not just justice-loving people, but more basic than justice-loving people, or more important, is that we are loving people. We are people who love, people who are not indifferent, people who care. That is why in our gospel, Jesus said, Jesus showed to his disciples what it is to be a true disciple of Jesus Christ. It is not about positions. It is not about gaining power. What did Jesus do? His gesture is very, very interesting and very symbolic. Jesus placed a child in their midst, not above them, not below them, not before them, but in their midst. And what did Jesus do? He embraced that child, as if identifying himself with that child. Others would say, we Christians should be like a child, innocent. But others would say, Jesus' embrace is a gesture of identification to the powerlessness of the child. Jesus identifies himself with those who are powerless. And for us Christians, it is not just doing justice, working for justice for those who are powerless, but loving them, being identified with them, being one with them. That's what Christ did. Not only for peace, not only for justice, but for charity, for love. And I hope, my dear brothers and sisters, especially for us Filipinos, we do not simply look back and say, oh, how peace-loving we are. But also, we must strive to be a justice-loving people. and a loving people. And so we ask God for the grace not only to be peaceful, but to be peacemakers. Not only to maintain peace, but to work for peace through justice. And above all, to be charitable to one another. We also